Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Hakem. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning, and I can't thank you enough for joining us this morning. We do have a busy morning, a lot to get to. It's not just going to be about the protests on college campuses, though there are a few things we definitely have to hit on. If you've been following the news late last night, early this morning, we will talk about that. We also have a lot here about Biden and Trump and just some miscellaneous. Our thoughts and prayers go out with the four law enforcement officers that were killed. And our thoughts and prayers go out to their families and friends in the shooting near Charlotte. One suspect is dead. Two others have been detained. We don't have a lot of information. It's still relatively breaking news. But an agent with the U.S. Marshals and 3 police officers were killed Monday and 4 other officers wounded when they were met with a hail of bullets while trying to serve a warrant in Charlotte, North Carolina. Some of the officers were gunned down in a second surprise round of gunfire after the first officer shot and killed the wanted suspect in the initial barrage of bullets on a front yard in a quiet suburban neighborhood. We will find out more and try to keep you updated on that, but we send our thoughts and our prayers to the families of those lost heroes. We have also, and it's always tough to segue from such a heartbreaking story, we do have, and I swear I'm not trying to make this a part of the program. It just naturally shows you what happens in politics, which is the idea that you have to know who you're voting for. And we talked about this DA, upstate New York DA, they say. They always say it that way, in the New York Post. Monroe County District Attorney Sandra Dorley. She is now blaming that she was had a frightening medical concern earlier in the day, work stress, for cursing out that police officer. I was dealing with 3 homicides that occurred on the weekend. I watched a video where an innocent cab driver was executed, and I was still reeling from a frightening medical concern that my husband received that afternoon. But we all have bad days and stress, and it was wrong for me to take it out on an officer who was just doing his job. While I previously apologized to him, I will say it again, I'm sorry. Police already have a tough job, and that day I made the officer's job harder. Now, as you know, she was being pulled over. Look at all these waves coming in. Thank you. She was being pulled over for going 55 and a 35. She said, what I did was wrong. No excuses. I take full responsibility for my actions. Did she? Do you feel this is a little disingenuous? Because it doesn't feel like she took full responsibility, at least not at first. I felt short of my values I've held for my entire 33-year career. I didn't treat this officer with the respect that he deserved. All police officers deserve respect. In addition to pleading guilty and paying the fine, Durley said she was referring her case to a different district attorney's office for a full review. If one of my assistant district attorneys had acted this way, I would have disciplined them. So I'm disciplining myself. I will take ethics training to remind myself that professionalism matters. I've been humbled by my own stupidity, and I'm fully to blame. I will make this right. I believe in accepting responsibility for my actions and had no intention of using my position to receive a benefit. Notably, including your district attorney is above nobody, including your district attorney, is above the law, even traffic laws. She says that she would punish an assistant district attorney, and boy, they're starting. Yes, the long knives are coming out for her. The Rochester Democrat and Chronicle found emails that show some tensions in her office. Now, the emails began pretty tame, according to Gary Craig from the Democrat and Chronicle, that she wanted to highlight some of her staff of prosecutors. But then the tone shifted. This lady seems to have a, well, we'll just say interesting. I don't want to say anything else, but interesting attitude sometimes. However, the email continues, many of you are a disaster, plain and simple. This will not be tolerated. In an email chain from DA Sandra Dorley. I think it's, and I mentioned this again, not because I want to highlight these things, because I actually have an update on Supermayor as well. But it just goes to show you how important it is to know who the candidates are. And I really do this more to expose or to highlight or to promote getting out and voting. The local races are the ones that affect your life, your day-to-day life, more than the ones we end up talking about the most, such as presidential or the Senate races, or gubernatorial or Congress. Now, senior Democrats are holding off on calling for Sandra Dorley's resignation. New York State Assemblyman Harry Bronson, a senior Democrat, has not yet joined the chorus of voices calling for a resignation. Now, Bronson's hesitation is notable, especially considering his past willingness to call for Governor Cuomo's resignation amid multiple allegations of misconduct. He emphasized the importance of understanding this as one instance, contrasting multiple claims against Cuomo. Just kind of interesting. Now, she's blaming it on a bad day. There is a way to tie this in that I think is very interesting. I know I'm moving fast. We have so much to talk about this morning that I'm probably going to be moving fast. But there's an interesting piece that the New York Post editorial board put out yesterday. And as soon as I saw it, I said, what a great way to tie this all in a way. Local upstate officials and even Governor Hochul are crying out for accountability from Monroe County District Attorney Sandra Dorley. Hochul has referred the matter to the Commission for Prosecutorial Conduct, while Rochester City Council members want Attorney General Tish James to investigate. Good. But why stop with Dorley? The New York Post editorial board asks. We could think of another DA deserving, I don't know why I said that so weird, deserving scrutiny. Manhattan's very own Alvin Bragg. Let's play the tape back on him. In what sure looks like a racially motivated pander to the Black Lives Matter crowd, he's prosecuting Daniel Penny for killing deranged vagrant Jordan Neely on a subway. He initially let a crew of illegals who beat up a New York City Police Department officer in January, or officers, I should say, in January off the hook with no bail, while whining about wanting to make sure he had the right perps. Sure. He charged and jailed heroic bodega clerk Jose Alba for a clear act of self-defense against violent ex-con Austin Simon, though he backpedaled on that after public outrage. And that was where, and I thought it was a brilliant move, that was the bodega that former President Trump visited in some of his off time from the trial. And don't forget, and this is what the Post boils it all down to, don't forget his show trial of Donald Trump, a case he is clearly prosecuting to serve the political aims of his own party, not in the name of justice. Of course, the last isn't one that A.G. James could investigate Bragg for, since she did the same with her civil fraud case against Trump over other victimless wrongdoings. As for Hochul, surely Bragg's acts represent a worse dereliction of duty than what Durley did, despicable though it be. And Bragg brazenly brooded his brutal and brainless agenda the moment he arrived in office, with a now notorious and partly disavowed Day One memo announcing to the world that crime would henceforth effectively be legal. Haul him on the carpet, Governor, or better still, remove him. Then maybe a little of voters' trust that public servants are actually looking out for the public might be restored. I thought that was a good way to tie this all in, not only the importance of voting locally, but make it there at the presidential level. There's an interesting poll out by Harvard Harris that shows that the majority of voters, and I'll get to this a little bit later on because I don't want to misquote it, but believe that there's this lawfare against Trump, this weaponization of the court against Trump. Now, we'll talk about that perhaps a little bit later on. One other update about the reason of realizing who you're voting for. Dolton, Illinois mayor. We had so many stories about her. I was starting to worry that we weren't going to have stories. I hadn't seen any updates. Mayor Tiffany Henyard, self-described as super mayor. She, just to give you an update, has security, went on lavish trips, used taxpayers' money to put posters of herself around town. It's a very weird story. And so when the council unanimously votes to audit the books and to look at the numbers, she vetoes that, which raises some red flags. Well, now the law firm representing the mayor has requested a withdrawal from several lawsuits involving Henyard and the village of Dolton. Why? They have not been paid. In a letter shared with the Daily Mail addressed to Henyard and the village board of trustees, the Delgado Law Group warned that the village of Dolton was on the verge of becoming uninsurable, adding that they had not been paid and were not required to work for free. Listen to this. This is a great line in here. By the way, Henyard is facing what looks like about 22 lawsuits. The board had recently voted to stop paying our legal bills, the letter from Delgado Law Group says. We are, of course, not required to work for free and declined to do so. Delgado Group added that the village of Dolton was quickly approaching the point of being uninsurable as it reportedly continues to rack up its debt. All right, there's your updates this morning. We are going to talk about Columbia, a few things here about Cornell as well. It's not going to be as lengthy of a discussion as it has been the last few days, not because there isn't a lot of breaking news on this front, just because we have other things to get to as well. But I do think it's vital that we talk about what's happening on college campuses because, again, you've heard me say it a million times, it'll happen at the DNC, Democratic National Convention. It'll happen in the streets, especially when school lets out. When these students return home, will they continue to protest? I'll raise that question to you. Will they continue to protest? Will it come to the streets? Will it? And I do believe there'll be examples of it at high schools because it is now the quote unquote cool thing to do to start one of these anti-Israel protests, to call for the destruction of Israel. That'll get you a lot of likes, a lot of shares. You may even go viral online, which isn't that the ultimate goal in life? So the deadline loomed and then passed yesterday at Columbia. We're going to talk about that when we come back. Thank you for all the waves. Keep them coming in. Make sure to comment. What do you think about Kristi Noem? I know we talked about her a lot yesterday. The coverage has not let up. We'll put it that way. So we're going to talk about that hopefully as well. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
Isn't your wellness important? Don't you want more energy? Now's the best time to make every day better and relieve those achy muscles and pains than with the Hesselson's Hot Tub. Hesselson's has hot tubs in stock and available for immediate delivery with unbelievable savings. Hesselson's offers 0% interest-free financing for up to 5 full years. Hesselson's carries the only hot tub brand in the industry with the exclusive freshwater salt system that is eco-friendly and easy to use and only enhances your hot tubbing experience. Come in today and see why your next hot tub should be a Hesselson's hot tub. And remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Attention, if you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and now have uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call now to see if you qualify. There's no fee unless we win your case.
I'm Marian Burt. I've lived here for 70 years, but I do fine right here in my house, and I want to be here as long as I can be. And I feel comfortable knowing that if something happened to me, someone would know because of the cameras that are installed in various spots in my home. That has been a wonderful gift to me to be able to have that security and that support from Full Circle America, and that's what it's all about.
Rated the best hearing aids of 2023 by Forbes, the Audion Atom 2 series offers superior sound quality and functionality for a fraction of the price. For just $189 a pair, the Atom 2 features 4 different hearing modes for all types of hearing loss. It packs crystal clear sound, a nearly invisible design, and is even rechargeable.
I actually like them better than my old $5,000 hearing aids. They're so comfortable, I forget I'm wearing them. And the sound is amazing.
The Atom Pro 2 is our smallest hearing aid yet, featuring advanced background noise cancellation and is the world's first hearing aid with built-in UV cleaning that kills 99% of bacteria.
I could not believe how my hearing and life changed without seeing a doctor or having a hearing test.
Join over 500,000 happy customers today and get the hearing you deserve.
Call 1-800-434-9816 or go to audionhearing.com to get your pair of Audion hearing aids starting at just $108.
Beautiful view of Market Street as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Well, I wanted to highlight, and I don't think I mentioned this on the program yesterday, on Thursday's show, during the Steuben's Senior Services Fund interview, we're going to be talking to fan favorite, former Congressman Joe Sempolinski. That's Thursday at 7, so make sure to get your questions in. So Ricky Schlott at the New York Post said what really went down on Columbia campuses as the protest deadlines loomed. You've seen the videos. You've seen that they've now taken it to the next step, which is overtaking buildings. I'm going to show you a couple pictures of that in just a moment. But 2 p.m., which was the deadline, which I think is maybe the third-ish deadline, So 2 p.m. came and went yesterday. Nothing happened. Campus security remained largely out of sight, while the NYPD reportedly were ready and waiting to help. They had no presence on campus, something the university itself would have had to authorize as it is private property. And so students continued to march well past 2 p.m., their faces still covered to obscure their identities. Have you noticed that even the faculty, some I think are using the COVID masks as an excuse. Some are going all out. But I have been kind of amazed that there's so few willing to show their face. There's a very terroristic legacy there of covering up your face to intimidate others. And so, as I said, it was well past 2 p.m. Then protesters turned on President Shafiq. Shafiq has blood on her hands, yelled protesters. Shafiq, by the way, nowhere to be seen on campus. University leadership are responsible for the application of rules with consistency and transparency. Columbia's administration has done precisely the opposite, and now angry, emboldened student protesters know that the school is not good for its word. Well, absolutely. They know they can get away with anything. That's why they're calling for amnesty. They don't expect consequences, because why should they? There have been no consequences. I think it's interesting. I'd like to pick your brain on this. In the next year, even before that, really, could you see major companies, major businesses getting resumes in at the end of the school year, people looking for jobs, and seeing Columbia on there and maybe not hiring them, not wanting to do the research if they were involved in these anti-Israel protests? So again, non-protesters getting punished. Just like we've seen at other universities where graduation is being canceled because of these protests. The selfishness of these protests by, again, you have to highlight, by students and faculty and the quote unquote grown-ups in the room. It's worth highlighting what this does for their future. I could see organizations saying, I'm sorry, we don't have the time or energy to look into your activities at Columbia, but because you're from Columbia University, we don't dare take a chance. Columbia has, as I mentioned, taken over. Anti-Israel protesters, have essentially taken over Columbia. Now they've moved into academic buildings. Dozens of anti-Israel protesters broke into an academic building at Columbia University and took it over early Tuesday morning, hours after the school began suspending students who refused to vacate their encampment. Yeah, there should not be, and mind you, I'm sure it's temporary suspension, but there should be no repercussions in their minds. They should be free to vandalize, free to intimidate other students. Here's a look from the New York Post of just a few photos from the chaos at that academic building, breaking out windows, as you see there. That's a way for them to barricade themselves in, preparing for people to try to open that door, almost a very weird version of tug of war. Now this is where the office of the dean is located. Maintenance crew getting involved here. And this, again, coming from the New York Post. Full credit where credit is due. And then protesters link arms outside of Hamilton Hall, barricading students inside the building. Now that was another interesting beginning to this. Before they took over the building, you had professors and faculty locking arms with their faces covered as well, protecting the students, if you want to use it in that term, protecting. According to the Columbia Daily Spectator, the student newspaper, the rogue group who made it inside the building tossed their belongings on the floor and then immediately began working to barricade themselves inside the building, which has been the scene of the school's anti-Israel encampment for over a week. You know that. The protesters even covered security cameras inside Hamilton Hall with tape and black trash bags, according to the newspaper. So this is what happens when you let these protesters and agitators run amok. When you don't enforce the rule of law from early on. Now you're going to say, well, Frank, they arrested some of these protesters early on, about 2 Thursdays ago. Well, here's the problem. I still believe that was done because of the horrible and disastrous hearing that Shafiq had in Washington. So the next day, all of a sudden, they start to crack down. Then she gets pushed back from the anti-Israel crowd. She's clearly not what you would call a strong leader and not really prepared for this moment. So it has been weak in the response. They've caved and cowered to these, and I don't think protesters is the right word, but that's the word we'll use, these anti-Israel protesters. And one thing that I know I've talked about a lot, but the fact that the media does not actually highlight the vitriol, the hate, the disgusting language, and instead continues to call them pro-Palestinian protesters. Now in Cornell, right down the road, they say it's suspending students after they refused the offer to move encampment to an alternate location. So here's another example of caving to the students, just like we had with Columbia, where, okay, this is all fine, but we don't want you to do it right here. So if you could just move. And why these kids are so entitled, they're not going to be told what to do. They're in charge. They come, as I've mentioned, I've quoted this a million times, they come to college to teach, not to learn. So they're not going to be forced around by President Martha Pollock at Cornell. They're not going to move. Well, she said last Thursday, a group of individuals formed an encampment on the Arts Quad. A student group had previously requested permission for an art installation there. Consistent with our policies, however, they were dishonest in their request. Consistent with our policies, however, they were dishonest in their request, stating that there would not be tents and that the art installation would be removed by 8 p.m. on Thursday. Without an approved permit in hand, the protesters could have remained in the alternative location per our policies, thereby avoiding disciplinary sanctions. So it's okay. Please, you got to give us a little bit of a win. And the students say, nope. The individuals requested and received multiple opportunities over a 5-hour span to consider their options, but ultimately decided not to move. They were then reminded several additional times that afternoon and evening that if the tents were not taken down, that they would be subject to disciplinary action for violating the university's time, place, and manner rule. With full knowledge of the sanctions to come, they again refused to comply, and we moved forward with a first set of immediate temporary suspensions. Ooh, temporary suspensions? Better take it easy, President Pollock. You don't want to go too strong-armed. You don't want to go too iron-fisted. We've got some other examples of this. Again, this is not going to be our only topic this morning, but I do believe it's a very, very important topic and one that we cannot take lightly, one we cannot ignore, because it does show a strain, not a strain anymore. It shows, as that one piece had, that I keep mentioning, keep quoting, even though the overall piece was a little bit wonky, but the Hamas to the new left. Hamas is cool, and swastikas are woke. And that's what we're doing. We've got to follow this trend and see where this is headed, because it's not calming down. It's only going to get worse. So we do have a few more stories on that. I see we have some comments coming in. I'll try to read as many as I can. So stay with us. We got to take our second break. I have a bad feeling I'm going to be running late all morning long. So please bear with me, and we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking.
Attention, if you were a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and now have uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call now to see if you qualify. There's no fee unless we win your case.
Stock up and save at GCP Discount Liquors and Wines. 1.5-liter Cavit Pinot Grigio, regularly $15.99, is on sale for $12.99. Save $2 a bottle with mail-in rebate, or $36 on a case of 6. 1.75-liter Canadian Club Whiskey on sale for $18.99. Save $5 a bottle with rebate, or $48 on a case of 6. GCP Discount Liquors and Wines in Horseheads, the best in service, selection, and price.
Attention high school students, college transfer students, or anyone looking to further their education. This is the event for you at the Elmira Elks on May the 8th. There will be a free college fair with free parking. Come and talk to 2- and 4-year college representatives, in and out-of-state schools, public and private schools, technical schools, United States Armed Service recruiters, local police and fire departments recruiting new cadets. This only happens once a year, May the 8th, at the Elmira Elks College Fair from 6 to 8 p.m.
Attention, care beneficiaries. This is an important message for people on Medicare. Today we are talking about Medicare Advantage plans. If you're new to Medicare, moving or losing coverage, and don't have a Medicare Advantage Part C plan, call now because there may be a Medicare Part C plan with additional benefits available in your zip code. You can call now to find out if you're eligible to enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan with additional benefits. Just call 800-351-6177 and a licensed insurance agent can look up your eligibility and plan options and see if you're eligible to enroll in a Medicare Part C plan that could save money or include additional benefits. Don't wait. You are not automatically enrolled in a Part C plan with additional benefits. If you're new to Medicare, moving or losing coverage, call for your free, no-obligation Medicare benefits review. You won't know what plan options are available to you unless you call, so call now. The call is free. Call 800-351-6177. 800-351-6177.
And we are back, broadcasting from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I'm your host, Frank Aiken. We have a couple comments. You know, I should have started with Nome because everybody wants to talk about Nome, and I understand it. I'm not saying that I went to the college stories first, but because I thought it was breaking news, not because I wanted to get it out of the way or something. But Kristi Noem has been a topic of great discussion. First, good morning, Frank. Good morning. I appreciate you doing the digging and sharing what you can where our local candidates are concerned. It's been something that I've noticed several years. It's been harder to find out what they really are all about when I try to research them. Thanks. Well, you're welcome. It is very difficult. That's one of the things that I always prided myself with radio, and I'm hoping to accomplish here. I think we did good last November. I'm trying to get the candidates on as much as we can because you can ask the questions that you're curious about. We can kind of dig a little bit deeper than maybe what the Facebook says or what their website says, because it is important to know. And I know it's very difficult in today's media climate, especially local media climate, to get that information like you once were able to. The debates aren't as prevalent. The Meet the Candidates forums and the Meet the Candidates in the paper, they'd always have that they're seem to be long gone, or most of the time. So we're trying to do our best. Continuing with that, though, as far as Kristi Noem is concerned, I guess there's no such thing as bad publicity. This may be the exception to that rule. Because according to the New York Post, speaking with people in Trump's circle, again, I'm not the biggest on anonymous sources, but I think the New York Post is a reputable outlet. They said that she has no shot now. Not to say they don't think she was really on the shortest of the list anyway, but this just put a kind of a nail in the coffin. And maybe we'll get more in depth on it, but saying that, Trump's not even known for being a dog person, but he understands the optics of this. Another comment from a different viewer. The media is ahead of themselves to bring out the Noem baggage. They should have waited until she was picked as Trump's VP. Something like that would have been a great October surprise. Why? She kind of forced the hand. Because I understand your point, because that's what I started. When I started seeing so many people basically counting her out, I said, this is an interesting timing. Maybe there are people behind the scenes that really don't want Noem to have it. There is some baggage there. But she's the one that got out ahead of this. She's been telling the story for a long time because I guess she thinks it shows that she can do the tough jobs. And people around her have said, stop telling the story. It's not going to play to the average American. But for whatever reason, maybe people in her circle or whatever thought it was still a powerful story. So she put it in her book. So she's the one that put it for the world to see. So I would normally agree with you and think of something maybe more nefarious, but I don't think she realized what that was ultimately going to do for her. It was a really wrong-headed, and it kind of shows a bad judgment. And I'm not trying to pile on her. I like Kristi Noem before this. She would have probably made a good VP. But if this is her if this is how she makes a judgment call, definitely some concerns there. Here's another comment. To your point, know who you're voting for. Now that animal lovers, especially dog lovers, know who she is, I predict this will be the end of her political career. It could very well be. This seems to be, to Miranda Devine's point from the New York Post, it seems to be the one thing that can unite both parties. They're disgusted by it. I don't know if it's the end of her career. But boy, it sure seems like it's the end of her having a shot at VP. But like I said before, you never know with Trump. Trump can throw in some wild cards. Okay. Couple other things. Talk about consequences. Students haven't had any consequences for their actions in these protests. Well, Columbia University may be facing some consequences. According to a new lawsuit, they have failed to protect Jewish students during these protests. That's a great point. I mean, there's so many students that should be suing the school for breach of contract, like former Governor Mike Huckabee said. That the fact that they have to go remote learning because of agitators, and the school does nothing about it, favoring one group over the other and not willing to keep their students safe, is a breach of contract. The class action lawsuit filed Monday by an anonymous student recognizes the right to protest, and the colleges have long been a place for lively debate of opposing viewpoints. Not lately, though. It's only one. That's what we're seeing really here. It's only one viewpoint. As we were learning, and we've learned so much. We knew how bad it was on college campuses, but now it's opened the eyes for so many to see the anti-Semitism that's being taught, to see the radicalization of the kids, but also the radical professors that they have. But the plaintiff alleged that while some protesters at Columbia are peaceful, a number of others continue to commit acts of violence. They are intimidating and harassing Jewish students and faculty members. They are inciting demonstrators to engage in hate speech. They also commit acts of violence which have been taking place, and they have been called for terrorist attacks, and they've even called for terrorist attacks against the United States and the state of Israel. According to the filing against university trustees, Jewish students have been physically attacked and targeted by pro-Hamas hate speech. The suit also accuses protesters of inciting violence against Jewish students and pro-Israel counter-protesters while on campus. Jay Eldelson, one of the attorneys in the lawsuit, said before a couple weeks ago, Columbia would tell anyone who would listen that it offered a safe space to its students to learn, debate, and even protest. Great point. Safe space, a term that's used so often in that type of woke culture. Is Columbia a safe space? The clear answer, or in many of these universities, clear answer is no to Jewish students. Quote, but now Jewish students are being pushed off campus by open threats and harassment from extremists within the protest movement, whose incitements are becoming increasingly violent. Rather than protect its students, Columbia has been complicit, offering an internet option university that only the students it can't protect have to use. We're fighting for safe passage for all Columbia students on the campus that they all have a right to. So hopefully there are some consequences there. Trump needs to, okay, some more comments. Yeah, Kristi Noem, I should switch to Kristi Noem, right? Trump needs to distance from Kristi. Yes, both Christies, Kristi Noem and Chris Christie. Spelled different, obviously. Agree with your, this is from a different viewer. Agree with your analysis of Kristi Noem's lack of political judgment. But just saying, when I grew up in rural, poor New York, a dog that killed chickens for fun was subject to the death penalty. No exceptions. People depend on those chickens for food. I get that, and I get your point. Totally get your point. And especially when you're talking about a farm and all that. I think it's a few issues here. The way that she described it, that she hated that dog, it almost seemed like coming out of it just didn't seem like it was coming out of place just because it was killing chickens. It seemed like it was a bigger picture of a dislike for this dog. But put that aside. Let's say 100% she was justified. Let's just say that for argument's sake. We'll have a little fun here. 100% justified. It's still not the best look. And sadly, in politics, that's a very important factor of, is this going to cost the ticket votes? And I think the clear answer there is yes, it would cost votes in the long run. Where this is a very important VP pick. Because this VP pick could help some people, as we're hearing so much about the Nikki Haley vote in Pennsylvania, it could convince some Nikki Haley supporters who are apparently or allegedly not going to vote for Trump to maybe change their mind and say, well, I don't want Biden, and Trump picked candidate X for his VP. I like candidate X, so I can hold my nose. That's not normally typically what happens. in the VP race. There's not a lot of power when it comes to the VP pick. I would say I think it helped McCain a lot. I know many of us voted for McCain because of Sarah Palin. So every once in a while it's important. But then if you look at a Paul Ryan with Romney, Paul Ryan couldn't even win his own state. So I do think this is a very important vice presidential pick for Trump. So I think he has to make the best choice. I'm just not sure after, because, I mean, think of how they just went after, and the media is going to go after whoever Trump picks, so I understand that. Let me just give that disclaimer. I understand that. But you don't have to feed them what they're going to go after, because think of what they did with Mitt Romney when Mitt Romney put the dog in the crate back in the 80s on the top of his car. That was a huge story for a very long time. This is a little bit next level on that, obviously, and that we just don't need to give them the fodder. Going back, I know I'm jumping all around. It feels like a Friday morning. Here it is. It's only, what day is it? Tuesday. Northwestern says agreement has been reached with students on limiting the scope of the protest. Good to see so many grown-ups caving to the students. Again, why would they expect any type of consequences at this point? This is why they're demanding amnesty. But you feel so bad, like for the Jewish community. Jewish UPenn students say the school is powerless against anti-Israel protesters who flout the order to clear the encampment. Well, again, it's not going to be the whole show this morning. I can tell you guys want to talk Kristi Noem. You want to talk about some other issues. We've got just a few things to wrap up on this. And then we're going to get to a lot of other issues as well. So please bear with me as we wrap up this discussion. We've got to take a short break. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox.
Attention. This is an important message for firefighters, members of the military, and airport workers. For decades, first responders and firefighters at military bases and airports used a chemical-based foam to fight fires. Studies have shown that chemicals used to make aqueous film-forming foam, or AFFF, are highly toxic to humans and have been associated with several types of cancer. If you or someone you know was diagnosed with any of those cancers, call now for a free case review.
I was an athlete when I grew up, and I always wanted to stay near athletes. What drove me to orthopedics and sports medicine in general was the need and the want to help these patients from their time of injury and helping them with surgery and through the rehab, getting them back to the field. My patients are obviously very important to me. These athletes, weekend warriors, all of them, I really want them to get back and be doing the things that they want to be doing.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-781-9990 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-781-9990. 1-800-781-9990. Call now.
Where's Alexi? When the dust cleared, Alexi was gone.
I have some information about your missing person. He's my son.
Alex is a really good kid.
Need to speak to one of your players.
This kid's in my world.
He lied right to my face.
It's better to beg for forgiveness than to ask for permission.
We don't want a hostage situation to pop up.
Put the gun down. What happens next is on you.
Tonight.
Our beautiful view of Market Street this morning. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio. Comment from a viewer. When Trump interviews for VP, his first question will be, did you ever shoot a dog? Follow-up question, did you ever promote that you shot a dog? Yeah, maybe a good idea at this point. Hey, that Cornell professor, yes, Cornell, right down the road, who described Hamas's October 7th terrorist attack as exhilarating and energizing, he has made his return to campus to cheer on his fellow anti-Israel protesters, despite the fact that he is on a leave of absence. Russell Rickford, an associate history professor, was seen back at the upstate New York school behind a megaphone last week, celebrating the students' protest of the war in Gaza, which included ralliers setting up their own encampment. You know all about that. Rickford, who took a leave of absence after apologizing for his comments about the October 7th massacre, cheered the protesters and assured all supporters that they, too, could be part of the liberated territory, even if they weren't camping on the university lawn. Now, and I know I mentioned this yesterday, but the media's coverage isn't so much now about, at all, really, about the anti-Semitism and the protests, any of that. It's really the criticism that they have is the criticism that police have been involved in some instances. At Columbia, one professor, again, a professor at Columbia, says the administration has turned the site of protest into a crime scene. Nobody thinks they should be suspended. Look at the thousands that have turned up here. Mohammed Mamadi, a professor of anthropology at the university, said, after the deadline passed, they stood, a lot of faculty, arm in arm to protect the kids. We teach our students not to accept things at face value. We teach them to ask questions no matter the consequences. The idea of penalizing students for protest, the administration has turned the site of a protest into a crime scene. If I were the administration, I would have promoted discussion, not muzzled discussion. What about this was discussion? The screaming, the yelling, the intimidation against Jewish students. I'm not, they're trying to, and that's of course from CNN, they're trying to paint it as a rosy picture. But as David Hersani said, and we'll just give you one more example of this, if you'd bear with me for a second here. CNN is monitoring campus protests and will continue to update this map with any news. So that is schools that have actually arrested students. See, they're not looking at this as this is what needs to be done. They're looking at this as how dare these universities have these kids follow the rules of law or have any type of consequences for their action. Never mind what it can do for their future. And that's what some students are now outraged over. They were bragging about being arrested. Now they realize, I may not, after all this money I've dumped into it, I may not get my degree, or I may have trouble finding work when I get out of here. David Hersani says hundreds of pro-Hamas college demonstrators are about to learn a valuable lesson. Sometimes there are consequences for your action. A number of students and faculty members, upset that hundreds of college activists have been arrested and suspended, are demanding amnesty for students and colleagues. Yes, the media has been calling for this as well. They don't believe these kids should have any type of consequences for their actions, no matter how destructive, no matter how intimidating towards Jewish students. They're concerned that suspensions and legal charges might hinder their future and the future of the students by following them into adulthood. Well, we can only hope, said David Hersani. If you want to harass Jewish students, violate campus rules, ignore warnings, break the law, vandalize public property, deny other students the right to learn, and act like a bunch of idiots, welcome to the repercussion. Maryam Alwan, a comparative literature and society major at Bernard, who was arrested at a protest, suspended and then kicked out of classes and banned from the dining hall, says it all feels very dystopian. Now, granted, I'm not sure what they teach in society classes. I mean, yeah, what is that? A society major. But it is unsurprising that so many of the self-absorbed students who fly Hezbollah flags and prattle on about imaginary genocides struggle to comprehend the basics of a civil society. Dystopia is a place where people intimidate peaceful neighbors, ignore the rights of others, and dispense with decency in the name of ideology. Dystopia is a Hamas-run Gaza. Here you don't get a pass for being passionate about the newest socialist cause. Then again, most of these students probably need remedial civics classes. They seem to be under the impression that free speech means schools have a responsibility to host them and help disseminate anti-American messages. And though the media has done its best to whitewash the ugliness of the protests, most of these demonstrators feature objectively anti-Semitic messages. Encampments are meant to intimidate fellow students and the administration. Most of them are also closed off to pro-Israel counter-protests. Pro-Palestinian marches are as pro-free speech as they are anti-war, which is to say not at all. They want free speech only for themselves and ceasefires only for Jews. Hamas is welcome to any brutality it likes. If you still want to participate in these vile demonstrations, take responsibilities for your action. And again, that's one of the reasons, very reminiscent of the Ku Klux Klan covering their face in this intimidation tactic. Let the world know who you are if you're so confident in your position. Now, David Harsani continues, many notable Americans have engaged in civil disobedience in the past. The Founding Fathers, Martin Luther King Jr., every one of them accepted that there could be serious consequences. That's what made their sacrifices matter. That's what made it so impactful. These demonstrators act like spoiled children who can't even deal with the mildest of blowback. Everyone, even privileged students who support terrorist revolutionaries, have a right to peacefully protest in the U.S. And Jewish Americans, all decent Americans actually, should remember the chants of river to the sea and exercise their own right to free association by shunning these Jew haters in public and professional life. Because if anything, colleges and cops have been far too lenient with students who have ignored warnings to disperse and made it impossible for universities to function. Without consequences, these radicals and their fellow travelers will return with a renewed vengeance. I could not agree more. I had to pass that along to you. We got a few other things before we wrap up this edition of Frankly Speaking. Got to take another short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Isn't your wellness important? Don't you want more energy? Now's the best time to make every day better and relieve those achy muscles and pains than with the Hesselson's Hot Tub. Hesselson's has hot tubs in stock and available for immediate delivery with unbelievable savings. Hesselson's offers 0% interest-free financing for up to 5 full years. Hesselson's carries the only hot tub brand in the industry with the exclusive freshwater salt system that is eco-friendly and easy to use and only enhances your hot tubbing experience. Come in today and see why your next hot tub should be a Hesselson's hot tub. And remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Was your baby fed a cow's milk baby formula such as Similac or Enfamil? If so, your child may be entitled to significant financial compensation. Evidence shows that cow's milk formulas increase the risk of NEC in premature babies, causing severe harm and even death. If your child was born premature and suffers from NEC, intestinal perforations, sepsis, cerebral palsy, or died as a result, you may have the right to sue for significant financial compensation. Call now for a free case review.
I love how quickly the view changes here on Market Street with our beautiful roof camera. And we are back with, Frankly Speaking, a few comments to read from viewers. Your show is like a vacation island in an ocean of chaos. Thank you. Your viewers are the friendly natives. I like to throw in the word chaos, too. Another comment from a viewer. A different viewer. I fear that because they gave the control over to the student protesters and others, the camps may stay and grow all summer and jack up an already volatile climate. I agree with you. I think, graduation, what was it, May 15th? So they've only got about 2 more weeks to do this. What happens when they get home? And it's either get that summer job or get your buddies together and start protesting and start bringing this to your hometowns, your home cities. I mean, I think there's a point to be made there. And again, you've heard me say it. I think you'll see examples of this happening on high school campuses as well. This is the hip thing to do now, is to participate in anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, pro-Hamas protests. Continuing with that comment, though, I don't think these are the students who are too concerned with their tuition bills. These are the ones that Biden are offering forgiveness to, aren't they? Yes. I mean, I think that's been one of the points really to take in from the beginning. I don't think anybody really worries about the consequences. They're probably not going to have to pay for it anyway. I do believe that you are going to see a scenario there where there are going to be major companies, major businesses that say, I'm sorry, but this school or that school, Columbia, Cornell, wherever, I don't want to have to do the research to see if you were one of the anti-Israel protesters. So I'm sorry, Columbia student. That very, very expensive degree doesn't have the impact you thought it would. Now, this I like. University of Florida. Did you see what the spokesman at the University of Florida, who ironically his last name is Orlando, Steve Orlando, this is what he had to say yesterday. This is not complicated. The University of Florida is not a daycare, and we do not treat protesters like children. They know the rules, they broke the rules, and they'll face the consequences. We also told them that clearly prohibited activities would result in a trespassing order from UPD, barring them from all university properties for 3 years, and an interim suspension from the university. For days, UPD patiently and consistently reiterated the rules. Today, individuals who refused to comply were arrested after UPD gave multiple warnings and multiple opportunities to comply. But this is what we needed at Columbia. This is what we needed at all these universities right from the beginning, that we do not treat, the university is not a daycare. We do not treat protesters like children. That's what we need more of. There are some House Democrats, 21 as a matter of fact, that have signed on to call for or demand, I know demand's thrown around too much, Columbia University trustees to disband the tent camp. We'll talk about that in just a second. We've got one more break in this hour, and then we'll start up hour 2 in just a little bit. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking.
Attention. If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and now have uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call now to see if you qualify. There's no fee unless we win your case.
My entire practice is focused and centered around St. James Hospital in Hornell. We see a lot of joint pain from hips, shoulders, and knees, whether you're a weekend warrior or even a 80 to 90-year-old who just wants to stay active and keep walking a couple blocks in their neighborhood. I want to spend the time to connect, to really hear you and understand why you've come to visit me to seek treatment. It drives me to be the best physician I can be so that you can go back and do the things that you want to do in life.
Getting aerial video for a commercial used to be extremely expensive, but not anymore. WYDC TV Big Fox now offers the Twin Tiers amazing aerial video for your business. We do it with our state-of-the-art drone and commercially licensed aerial pilot. Beautiful HD aerial video and pictures custom-made for your commercial. Call or email now to advertise on Big Fox TV and let everyone see your business in a whole new way.
And we are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. I'm your host, Frank Hagum. This is Frankly Speaking. So in line with this, to get away from the protests, and we can talk more about it if you want, but I guess, Blinken's really happy with the negotiations and what this could mean, saying that Israel, I can't remember the exact word that he used, but Israel went above and beyond in what they were offering. A group to consider ceasefire hostage release proposal that Israeli sources say could avert a Rafah invasion. Did you know, and this is why I bring up these protests, I don't believe that the students are well informed. I don't. I know, and you can say, well, it's anecdotal, Frank. They pick out the worst interviews when you have some of these people, and I get that. But I also don't think they realize exactly what they're saying. It's like any other trend, which is, oh, those kids, they're the cool kids. I want to be a part of their friend group, so I want to fit in. So I'll cover my face. I'll bring my Palestine with a flag. I will bring chants to shout that are anti-Semitic because they want to be liked. I think there's a lot of that. And I'm not saying there aren't some that don't know, that think they know what they're talking about. But did you know 4 out of 5 Americans favor Israel over Hamas? And actually most back the Rafah operation. That's the thing. get in and get out and get it over with before these protests continue. Let's end Hamas once and for all. Americans favor Israel and its war against Hamas by a margin of 4-1, and nearly 3/4 support a military operation in the southern Gaza city of Rafah. 4 out of 5 voters, 80%, back the Jewish state in its nearly 7-month-old war against the Islamic terrorist group, with the highest levels of support concentrated among older age groups. That's according to a Harvard CAPS Harris survey. Meanwhile, 72% of voters say they back an Israel Defense Forces military operation in Rafah to finish the war, with 28% saying Israel should back off now and allow Hamas to continue running Gaza. Wow. Well, it's like someone said yesterday. I mean, this ceasefire, first of all, I've been saying it all along, but the ceasefire, there was a ceasefire on October 6th. Now, what we know is these ceasefires just give time for Hamas to build back up. But that's encouraging to know that 80% back the Jewish state. Yes, it's kind of sad that 20% don't. But when you see the coverage of these on college campuses, it starts to make you wonder if not everybody has lost their mind. But we could talk more about the protests. I don't plan on it. There is a piece that I'm not going to get to, but I'll just highlight this for you if it's something that interests you. Again, this was at the New York Post as well by Daniel McCarthy. How the left's disdain for nationalism, it's fueling its hostility towards Israel. Nationalism has its defects, and national conservatism may not always remedy them. But if there's going to be any democracy in the 21st century, in America, Europe, Israel, or anywhere, there must be nations and nationalists willing to stand for them. So you can find that piece at the New York Post. Now, coming up in the next hour, we're going to talk a little bit about some local issues to kick off the program. I do want to rebroadcast, because today is the last day of Donate Life Month, and we know that's something that Phil Palmisano has just been doing a great job talking about it and promoting it. And if you recall, a few weeks ago, I played that really impactful, powerful ad. Not ad, just a little video clip, a compilation of why it's so important to so many. And I thought I'd play that for you one more time at some point in the next hour. But we're going to talk about Biden. We're going to talk. We could continue to talk about Kristi Noem if you want. Has no shot at being Trump's running mate now. Again, I mean, it was an unforced error. She was the one that released the story. She's the one that wouldn't take people's suggestion that she stop talking about the story that isn't as impactful as she thinks it is, and it's not going to resonate with as many voters as she thinks it would. But you can always weigh in and tell me different. What do you think about this? I don't know if I agree with this. All eyes on Marjorie Taylor Greene's threat to oust Mike Johnson. So those and much more we'll be talking about. Trump as well, of course. The hush money trial begins up again today. Maybe we'll have some stuff on that tomorrow on the program. And I think we're good for this hour. Hard to believe. We are moving fast. It does kind of feel like a Friday edition. We're jumping around so much. So many great comments. So many fun waves. Thank you, everybody. Keep those comments coming in. Keep the discussions coming in. And we'll continue having the conversation. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. You can reach out at any time, 24/7. Leave a voicemail, leave a text. Text is probably the easiest, but you can leave a voicemail if that's easier for you. And now we're going to take this break, and then we're going to start up the second hour of Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. Stay with us.
Looks like y'all got a lot of stuff here in your water.
You're never going to believe it, but this can filter up to 60 different contaminants from your water.
It's all about cleaner drinking water.
Dude, that's good water.
And that's good water.
Now that's good water.
That's good water, eh?
No matter where you live, there's a Culligan water expert nearby. At Culligan, we think about your water, so you don't have to.
Call today to schedule your free water test.
Attention, you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer. You may be entitled to significant compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and now have uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call now to see if you qualify. There's no fee unless we win your case.
Every Saturday, your game is on Fox. Because here is where it happens. Saturday on Fox, Judge swaggered up and went supersonic. True story. Saturday on Fox, Mookie put on a show in New York. You saw that, right? Saturday on Fox, Acuna racked these up on his way to the record. And it was Saturday on Fox when Harper...
Hour 2 has now begun here on Frankly Speaking. I am your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Since the discussion, and I know I've been talking about the protests on college campuses, but we've had a lot of great discussions. If you're just joining us, about Kristi Noem, you've undoubtedly heard the story. Kristi Noem, in her book, telling the story of when she put down her 14-month-old puppy because she didn't like the puppy and had been getting into the chickens. And I've kind of been hinting towards this piece all morning long when we've had the discussion, so I thought we'd kick off. I do have some local stories I'm going to get to in just a moment, but I thought, why not kick off the 7 o'clock hour with little Kristi Noem? And I'll pose the question to you again. Do you think she has any chance at being VP? Well, South Dakota Republican Governor Kristi Noem has, quote, no shot, I would say an ironic way to word that, at being Donald Trump's running mate. One ally of the presumptive Republican nominee said Trump's team was bewildered to hear of Noem's account in her new book, No Going Back, The Truth on What's Wrong with Politics and How We Move America Forward. Quote, she was already unlikely to be picked as VP, but had a shot, the person said of Noem, who has been widely projected to be on Trump's shortlist. After this, it's just impossible. The source who spoke to the Post noted that 2012, I've been mentioning this as well, when Mitt Romney is still remembered for sticking his dog in a crate set on top of the family station wagon for a 1983 trip from Boston to Canada. Trump isn't necessarily a dog person, but I think he understands that you can't choose a puppy killer as your pick for blatantly obvious reasons. A second source told the Post that Trump likes Kristi a lot, but was disappointed when hearing the dog story. It certainly has not enhanced her chances, but no decision has been made concerning any of the VP candidates. You know, I thought someone had a very good point on this program, and I'm sorry I can't give you credit, but I know a viewer had reached out and said, when Trump's doing all these court cases and in court every day, because he has to be at this trial every day, why doesn't he pick his VP who can then go out and campaign? I thought that was a good point. Though the more I think about it, perhaps the fact that the coverage that this gives Trump, showing more people the kind of the weaponization of the judicial system, the lawfare as it's being called, maybe he believes that's where the focus should be on, because that would give the media a good opportunity to focus on what the VP candidate says and not him when he has those small, short windows to kind of say his piece, if you will. So anyway, it sounds like most people have turned on Noem. She released a statement. I can understand why some people are upset about a 20-year-old story of Cricket, one of the working dogs at our ranch, in my upcoming book, No Going Back. The book is filled with many honest stories of my life, good and bad days, challenges, painful decisions, and lessons learned. What I learned from my years of public service, especially leading South Dakota through COVID, is people are looking for leaders who are authentic, willing to learn from the past, and don't shy away from tough challenges. My hope is anyone reading this book will have an understanding that I always work to make the best decisions I can for the people in my life. The fact is, South Dakota law states that dogs who attack and kill livestock can be put down. Given that Cricket had shown aggressive behavior towards people by biting them, I decided what I did. Interesting. Whether running the ranch or in politics, I've never passed on my responsibilities to anyone else to handle, even if it's hard and painful. I followed the law and was being a responsible parent, dog owner, and neighbor. As I explained in the book, it wasn't easy, but often the easy way isn't the right way. So she must be feeling the heat on this, not just from the VP standpoint, the potential VP nod, but also maybe just for as governor. Now, again, I only mentioned this piece because, of course, he had to weigh in on it. Dean Obeidallah from CNN says Kristi Noem shot her untrainable dog. If she thought we'd be impressed by her toughness, she was wrong. And they almost try to, because she was on the short list, or maybe still is on the short list for Trump, they sometimes, the media is brilliant at this, try to almost still say, well, this is the kind of people Trump hangs around with. A top contender to be Trump's running mate in this year's presidential election reportedly writes in her book that she took the pup, a wire-haired pointer, who was proving to be high-spirited and something of a handful, to a gravel pit and shot him. How did this cruel and horrifying act come to light? Noem was not confronted by an investigative reporter with a gotcha question, nor was she outed in a social media post. No, she tells about it in her book. I don't want to go through all this, but I find this a really weird line at the end, okay? My own hypothesis, why did I try doing that? My own hypothesis, however, is that she possibly thought that telling the story would endear her to a certain breed of heartless Republicans. This is coming from CNN. Let me reiterate this, okay? This is the media who they gave Biden a standing ovation during the White House Correspondents' Dinner, who then claimed to us that they are just reporting the facts. My own hypothesis, this is Dean Obeidallah, however, is that she possibly thought that telling the story would endear her to a certain breed of heartless Republican, convincing them of her toughness. If that's what Noem's calculation, she might have made a grave miscalculation. She might herself be coming to that conclusion. Writing on X on Sunday, Noem seemed to take a softer tone, and I mentioned that. We'll see if that explanation helps to quell the public indignation. After all, people of all political persuasions are rightly disgusted by cruelty to animals, even if they don't always treat their fellow humans with the respect and dignity they deserve. There's our kickoff to the 7 o'clock hour and the always fair reporting from CNN. We're going to talk a little bit about, well, I'm going to tell you more about the media, because you've got to say people like Pelosi, people like Biden, they have it so easy with the media that when there's a little bit said, not even a tough question, a fair question, they normally can't handle it. They get angry. They start name calling, those type of things. We've seen it from Biden. We saw it from Pelosi yesterday. We're going to be talking about that in a little bit. First, before we go to our first break in this hour, congratulations. This has always been a big success. Steuben County's Drug Take Back Day, which was on Saturday, netted 781 pounds of unwanted and expired medication, according to Connie Terry, Steuben Prevention Coalition Opioid Committee Program Assistant. The event Saturday saw a significant increase compared to October of last year, when they collected 81 pounds. This year, collecting 781 pounds. Now, this is held twice a year. Residents of Steuben County were encouraged to clean out their medicine cabinet and safely dispose of unneeded medication. Terry said, "Thank you to everyone who participated in this event. When people safely dispose of unwanted and expired medication, they not only protect their families, but also the community." So big success, 781 pounds. Wow. All right. A lot to talk about when we come back. Feel free to weigh in if you're just joining us. We've had a few waves, but we had a lot of great comments in the first hour, covering just about everything. But yet there's so much more left to cover. Where do I want to go from? Oh, I know what I wanted to say before I went to break, because I do have 1 minute before I have to go to break. I thanked yesterday Steuben Senior Services Fund for being the new sponsor of our interviews here on Frankly Speaking. And as you know, we have some pretty good interviews, interviews I'm proud of on the show. One of those interviews coming up is a fan favorite, so mark your calendar on Thursday. Former congressman, current assembly candidate, and the current chairman of the Steuben County GOP, Joe Sempolinski, will be our guest during the Steuben Senior Services Fund interview section of our program. So we'll be getting a whole hour with Joe Sempolinski starting at 7 a.m. And if you recall last time, you may want to tune in a little early, because as soon as he pulled up, we went right on the air. So I want to say it was probably 6:45 last time. Though I can't guarantee. He's only booked from 7 to 8. But he will be joining us on Thursday, so you can always get your questions into me ahead of time, or can wait till the day of the broadcast as well. I'm working on some other interviews that I will highlight But we've got some really good ones coming up. So thank you again to Joe Sempolinski for agreeing to be on Thursday during the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of the program. Also, I mentioned coming up in a little bit, probably not this break, but the next break, I want to rebroadcast that, I don't know what you'd call it, a little vignette that was put together about Donate Life Month. Today's the last day of Donate Life Month, and Phil Palmisano has been doing such a great job of highlighting that. And I thought that vignette was so powerful that I want to play that for you at some point during this program, I guess in honor, if you will, of the last day of Donate Life Month for 2024. All right, let's take that break. Our first break. Keep those comments, those waves. Hey, look at that. Perfect timing. Keep those waves coming in. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please stay with us.
Attention. This is an important message for firefighters, members of the military, and airport workers. For decades, first responders and firefighters at military bases and airports used a chemical-based foam to fight fires. Studies have shown that chemicals used to make aqueous film-forming foam, or AFFF, are highly toxic to humans and have been associated with several types of cancer. If you or someone you know was diagnosed with any of those cancers, call now for a free case review.
I'm Marianne Burke. I've lived here for 70 years, but I do fine right here in my house, and I want to be here as long as I can be. And I feel comfortable knowing that if something happened to me, someone would know because of the cameras that are installed in various spots in my home. That has been a wonderful gift to me, to be able to have that security and that support from Full Circle America, and that's what it's all about.
Race car drivers change lanes very fast, but with no outside mirrors. How come they don't crash? Introducing Angel View, the new wide-angle mirror that reduces blind spots. Angel View simply snaps over your car's rear view mirror, giving you a 160-degree view behind you. Just look at the difference. Look, ordinary rear view mirrors are small and flat, but Angel View has a huge mirror with curved glass. This convex shape allows you to see both blind spots with one glance. And with our Pro Edition special coating, it's anti-glare at night. Get your Angel View now for just $19.99. But wait, Angel View may be discontinued. Due to rising costs, Angel View is stopping manufacturing effective immediately. Once the current inventory is gone, it's gone forever. Order now.
Call 1-800-897-0371 or visit getangelview.com. Order now.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking, talking to the people that affect your life, that affect all of our day-to-day lives. This is something you're not going to get anywhere else. We've got a lot to offer. There'll be a lot of news, local, regional, national, really the things that affect you. And I think you'll be glad that you tuned in. So think of it as radio on TV. Frankly Speaking, live, 2 hours long, starting at 6 a.m. on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is history. Yes, as the commercial said, we are now 2 hours long. There's our beautiful view of Marcus Street here on Corning as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you for joining us this morning. Local news, breaking news before we get into the presidential race. Congressman Nick Langworthy has announced more than $348,000 in federal funding for new workforce training program at Corning Community College. It was announced that the grant from the U.S. National Science Foundation for the creation of an optical technology program at the SUNY Corning Community College campus. This is what the congressman had to say. I'm proud to announce this investment in a new optical technology degree path at the Corning Community College, empowering future generations of skilled professionals in the southern tier. This program will leverage local companies to create a curriculum that gives students real-world experiences that will transition into careers, helping to close the skills gap faced by many employers in the region. I look forward to seeing the positive impact this federal funding will have on our entire community, driving innovation and creating pathways to prosperity for years to come. Now, according to the National Science Foundation. This grant is part of the Advanced Technological Education Program, which aims to support partnerships between two-year institutions of higher education to improve the education of technicians in science and engineering. This award will enable the establishment of an Optical Technology Associates of Applied Sciences degree program at CCC in collaboration with private industry partners such as Corning Inc., Mikatu Inc., and other companies. I should probably know how to say that. So thank you for that information coming from Congressman Langworthy's office. Okay, this is kind of interesting. They had some people research it. I don't know if you know this trend. Trend's not the right word. But they'll come out with a speech of Biden's. He'll give the speech and they'll have to correct it. So they dug into it at the Daily Caller. White House communications staff has had to correct President Joe Biden's public remarks at least 148 times since just the beginning of this year. That's from a review of official White House transcripts. The White House releases an official transcript anytime the president gives a speech or takes questions. Communications staff frequently correct, add to, or alter Biden's official remarks in order to either bring them into compliance with official White House policy or, in some cases, reality. In several cases, official statements had to be changed to convey the exact opposite of what Biden actually said. Through 118 statements, speeches, and chats with reporters spanning from January 1st to April 24th, the White House has officially updated its transcript with corrections to what the president said out loud at least 148 times. Now, I'm not going to give you all the examples. They go through quite a few. This was reported on Drudge Report this morning. I just thought it was kind of interesting. Now, they're saying that Biden is having an issue with young voters, that this problem is getting a lot worse, which would make sense. When you see now, you and I may make the argument that Biden has continued to weaken on his stance on Israel, but to the protesters or younger people that we're seeing protested, it's still too strong of a stance pro-Israel, because what they're pushing, obviously, is anti-Israel, pro-Hamas messaging. The media is not reporting on that. As I continue to say, the media is trying to report on that it's bad that they send police to these peaceful protests. But then when you see what's actually happening on the ground, it's not a peaceful protest. Look at the pictures that the New York Post is highlighting from Columbia, them taking over that academic building. I don't know when peaceful gets thrown, but it's just interesting when they get to pick and choose when something's peaceful. I'll put it that way. But they always call it pro-Palestinian protests when we know it's really anti-Israel, where it's pro-Hamas from what they're saying. They cover their faces. They have certain flags from various organizations that some would even argue terrorist organizations in some cases, where they had Hamas flags. You've seen the rhetoric, the intimidation of Jewish students. You've seen the vile, hateful things said, graffitied, etc. Those people will not vote for Biden. They call him Genocide Joe. So Zachary Wolf from CNN, yes, CNN, says Biden's young voter problem keeps getting worse. Unrest on college campuses is driven in part by an opposition to an unpopular Democratic president's support for Israel. Again, I'd make the argument that support has weakened dramatically. But that's not still, just like we see with their demands, their list of demands, these protesters. It is always all or nothing. We demand these 10 things, and they better be 100% agreed to, or we're going to stay here forever. What do they have to lose? There are no consequences. They're finally starting to throw some consequences, and you have professors and faculty demanding amnesty for these students because it could follow them into the adulthood. Well, isn't college supposed to be about learning? And guess what? There are consequences to your actions. And if that means that it follows you into adulthood, that should be something that you should have thought about, and also maybe perhaps warned about, at least by your faculty, by your teachers, by your professors. But I'll continue because I know we talked a lot about the protests this morning. I don't want to keep getting into it, but it's important in this discussion. Add in the fact that Democrats are holding their national convention in Chicago this year. It's not hard to hear echoes of 1968 when the protest movement collided with mainstream politics. The irony of that, when these protests first started, they started shutting down bridges, and it wasn't on colleges yet. And I kept highlighting the fact that you realize that the convention's in Chicago this year. I mean, it's almost eerie, the similarities here. And not similarities on necessarily what was protested, but the acts that will be done. I've been saying that for a while. Karl Rove, I know, stole my point last week and said the same thing, but whatever. The pro-Palestinian movement in the U.S. today is pro-Palestinian. That's how you can tell the difference between the outlets. That you can tell if they're biased or not. The pro-Palestinian movement in the U.S. today is a far cry from the anti-war movement of the 60s, but the angst and frustration of young Americans is clear and growing. It extends far beyond their views of the Middle East, and it's a major threat to President Biden's campaign to keep Trump from returning to the White House. Yes, if you recall that piece I brought to you last week, for whatever reason, they believe, and I'm going to use their language, pro-Palestinian, they believe pro-Palestinian encompasses everything. I think the authors called it everythingism or something like that. But if you're I don't know. I'm trying to think of some causes that people are protesting. The one person was protesting because she or he, I can't remember, was overweight, and she said that I think it was is encompassed in this protest, and that transgender issues were in it. It's all Palestine. They kept saying it's all Palestine, which to you and I makes absolutely no sense. If you really look what they're calling for, that piece we had earlier where they said, boy, these protests are dystopian that they're arresting us. No, dystopian is what Gaza would look like with Hamas taking over. So they're calling for these terrorist organizations to take over, and it's all in the name of, I guess, rights and safe spaces, which would not happen. And I thought that was a really good point this morning, not to go on a tangent, but the idea of safe spaces. It's not a safe space on these college campuses as of right now. But again, I don't mean to keep going down this road. Young voters are part of the Democrats' natural base of supporters. But Biden is actually 11 percentage points behind Trump among young voters 18 to 34 in a head-to-head match in a CNN poll conducted by SSRS and released over the weekend. Yeah, that poll must not have went well for Biden because they've been forced to report it at places like CNN and elsewhere. And it's been with great fear. We've got to take a short break. Fear in their mind of what the future could hold in November. We're going to take a short break to talk about this a little bit further. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Isn't your wellness important? Don't you want more energy? Now's the best time to make everyday better and relieve those achy muscles and pains than with the Hesselson's Hot Tub. Hesselson's has hot tubs in stock and available for immediate delivery with unbelievable savings. Hesselson's offers 0% interest-free financing for up to 5 full years. Hesselson's carries the only hot tub brand in the industry with the exclusive freshwater salt system that is eco-friendly and easy to use and only enhances your hot tubbing experience. Come in today and see why your next hot tub should be a Hesselson's hot tub. And remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Was your preemie baby fed a cow's milk baby formula such as Similac or Enfamil? If so, your child may be entitled to significant financial compensation. Evidence shows that cow's milk formulas increase the risk of NEC in premature babies, causing severe harm and even death. If your child was born premature and suffers from NEC, intestinal perforations, sepsis, cerebral palsy, or died as a result, you may have the right to sue for significant financial compensation. Call now for a free case review.
You've been tearing your old statements and bills, but thieves use this information to steal your identity. Don't be a victim. Get the ID Police, the new ink roller that encrypts all your old documents. So before you throw it out, just roll it on, and your information is gone, both on the front and through the back. Even if the paper is held up to the light, even your medical information is safe with the ID Police. So block it out before you throw it out. Order now and get your ID Police for as low as $9.99 and get free shipping too. This offer is not available on Amazon, so call or click now to get your ID Police for as low as $9.99 with free shipping. Order now.
Call 1-800-898-1002. That's 1-800-898-1002 or visit getidpolice.com. So call 1-800-898-1002. Order now.
Thank you so much for joining us here on Frankly Speaking on Big Fox as we broadcast proudly from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Coming up in just a little bit, I'm going to play that vignette from Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. But before that, I want to get back into the young voters. And we have a viewer comment here. Does no one notice on the news they all have the same exact tense? I guess I didn't really pay attention. Does, I guess, look similar, maybe? The tense look kind of similar. I'm not sure. I guess I hadn't really thought about it. But continuing with this, among all Americans, about 47% of registered voters in this CNN poll said that they were satisfied with the candidates that have been chosen for president this year. That figure was dragged down by the fact that just 37% of young voters said that they were satisfied. Just 37. Well, okay. I'm not going to dive too much into that. When other potential candidates were added in, more than 1/5 of registered voters, 18 to 34, say they support Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in his independent bid. Older voters are less likely to say they support Kennedy. That's interesting if Kennedy gets support. Well, that's probably just that kind of protest vote that I don't like either of these guys. So I'm throwing up my hands and going for the third party. Well, the reason we bring this up is that younger people are not going towards Biden. Many of them calling him Genocide Joe. Did you see the Raging Cajun, James Carville? I got to be careful because I don't know what show he was on or where he was saying this, but you want to talk about filthy language. Democrat strategist James Carville had choice words for young voters on Sunday, warning that I gotta be careful here, little blanking 26-year-olds unenthused about President Biden will have no rights left. Yes, no rights left if former President Trump wins. So they've realized maybe this idea of threat to democracy is not resonating as much as they hoped because, they try to take him off the ballots, meaning Trump. They've been using lawfare to go after him. So maybe this idea of threat to, and let's even look at something as simple as Biden saying, yeah, never mind what the Supreme Court says. We're going to still give student loan forgiveness. So maybe it's a little bit of it's a hard sell to say Trump is a threat to democracy. So he goes even further. You'll have no rights left. Let's continue. Again, I got to be careful. So please, as I take this slow, because James Carville seemed to be very, very, very upset. It was on a podcast called Politicon. So I hear this a lot. James, young voters are just not into this. It's two candidates, one in their 80s, one is almost in their 80s. They're concerned about things that Washington politicians, and you just can't blame them for, blank, blank, you. Are you watching what is happening? I guess he's saying that to these younger people. Blank you. Are you watching what is happening in the Supreme Court? If you're 26, do you see what they're doing? First of all, they're going to take every right that you could possibly have away from you. He went on to call the Supreme Court being illegitimate, and I can't use the term here, and derided the High Court as an illegitimate organization. Wow. You tell these young people, if you don't get involved right now in this election, they're going to be involved in your life for the rest of your blanking life. If they get a hold, there will be no government left. There'll be no rights left. You will live under theocracy. You'll end up with a Christian nationalism. But that's all right, you little blanking 26-year-old. You don't feel like the election's important to me. They're not addressing the issues that I care about. Tell these young people to get off your blanking, blank, and go vote. Because you should vote like your entire future, and the entire future of the United States depends on it. Because quite frankly, it does, and that's not an exaggeration. Wow. It's good that he's well-versed in hyperbole. That's been typical, this kind of exaggerate. I mean, I know he tells us it's not an exaggeration, but it started as a threat to democracy. Now every right you have will be taken away. That you'll live under a theocracy. Christian nationalism. There will not be a single right left. There'll be no United States of America left. There'll be no government left. That one wouldn't be too bad. So he's using this, I don't know, as a scare tactic. Or young people who are actually right now in colleges calling for Hamas, basically run by Hamas, that are calling for the end of democracy, the end of America. Are those people concerned with James Carville's scare tactics of you'll have no rights? They're supporting an organization that a terrorist organization that you can't even say gives rights or take. There are no rights. Look what it's like to live as a woman there. I mean, you can't have any different opinion from the terrorist leaders. Of course, would be dead. But that's what these young people are supporting in these protests. So why would this scare tactic by James Carville work? It might actually draw votes if that's what if he were to really think. I mean, talk about being out of touch, not knowing your audience. Maybe that's why the young people are leaving in droves, because these young people, tragically, are in support of Hamas. They don't like, apparently, the rights and freedoms. Well, they like the right to protest, but they don't understand that there's certain ways you've got to go about that. They don't realize that a private institution like Columbia, for instance, can punish you for not having that permit or for camping on campus. They don't realize that, so they want full immunity and to get in no trouble. So they hate some of our laws, they like some of them, they have rights, etc. But overall, they've been calling for the destruction of Israel, the destruction of America. So why would you think, James Carville, that your suggestion that Trump would destroy America, why that wouldn't play in their favor, that they wouldn't like that? Now, of course, I don't accept James Carville's premise. I think it's a lot of hyperbole. I think it's extremely laughable. I don't know if all the cussing is to try to make him feel cool or hip, but I think it comes off as someone looking deranged. It comes off somebody, well, that old saying, Trump derangement syndrome. That's what we're seeing as these polls keep coming out, not in favor of Biden, showing more favorability towards Trump. You are going to see more unhinged rants like this, not just from James Carville, but from those in the media, from those in office. We saw it, and it was aggressive then, back in 2016. But I think then they realized we should have been even more aggressive, more nasty, more, well, in this case, more just spewing of hate. Maybe that would resonate with people. I don't know. James Carville seems a little off of his rocker. Here's a message from a viewer. I believe there are now 2 people that won't be running for office this year. Joe Biden will pause his candidacy. Okay, interesting point. And Kristi Noem shot, in quotes, a VP spot in the foot. Thank you, Ken. I know some have been saying that about Biden. I don't have an opinion on that necessarily, only meaning that every time I think that could come, when he has a really bad couple of weeks and the speeches are really bad, and, you know, there's all that concerns about his health, and then polls like this come out and it's not good, it's not for his camp. I always think that, but nothing really comes from it, and it's so late. But, you know, there's still plenty of time in the sense of if it's a, hey, I'm stepping down, I just don't have it in me, but this is going to be the person. But I would think if that was being worked on behind the scenes, you'd want to do it pretty soon, obviously before the convention. But, I mean, I don't know. Thank you for that message. It's just a little brain tease there, something to think about. Another comment. Oh, so James Carville was on a YouTube podcast. Okay, thank you. And a great point from this viewer. Ask the protesters if DEI exists in Palestine. That's what I mean when they don't know. I mean, they don't know what they are supporting. You know, there was a time when it's safe spaces and it was all about love, right? And that everybody had to be kind to one another. Then all of a sudden they showed their true colors, and one day they woke up and said, we want to intimidate Jewish people. We don't want Jewish people on campus. This is no longer a safe space for Jewish students or for anyone that has any disagreement with us. Now, they've always been kind of like that, hiding under terms like DEI or hiding under safe spaces and those type of things. But it is interesting to see what they are now supporting. And again, I'm sorry, I'm going to bring it up yet again, but I thought it was such a powerful message. Meet the new left who think Hamas are good and the swastikas are woke. That's what this has turned into. And the protests on college campuses are just proving it. We do have to take a break. We've got so much more to talk about. Keep those comments coming in. And thank you for all the waves, by the way, as well. We've been having a good discussion this morning. I do appreciate it. When we come back, we're going to play that vignette from Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. I played this a few weeks ago, but seeing as today is the last day of Donate Life Month, I thought it was a nice way to kind of put a bookend on it. Phil has been on the show so many times talking about this important issue that I thought this was such a touching little piece. We'll play that when we come back, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. We'll be right back.
Attention, if you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and now have uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call now to see if you qualify. There's no fee unless we win your case.
Libraries are important because you can make friends here. It's fun coming to the library. I really enjoy it. I really like it because there's lots of cool, stuff. If you come here, you're probably going to get sucked into a book. There's a children's section for the younger kids. There's also an adult section for adults that don't want to read children's books. The library is for everybody.
Strong libraries equal strong communities. Vote on May 21st.
Your wallet is always in danger. Criminals can hack your information without you even knowing. Introducing Slim Mint, an ultra-thin RFID blocking wallet that keeps your cards and cash protected. Slim Mint uses the latest RFID blocking technology to prevent thieves from stealing your info. It's ergonomically designed to optimize space and keep your belongings organized. With the auto-locking Slim Mint, your cards and money stay securely in place. It has a built-in cash clip and a flexible outer band to fit your additional cards and cash. Call or click now and get Slim Mint for just $29.99. Order in the next 5 minutes and you'll get an instant $10 discount. So it's only $19.99. But wait, due to rising costs, this may be your last chance to get Slim Mint at this low price. There's a strict limit of 3 Slim Mint wallets while supplies last. Don't wait, order now.
Call 1-800-654-6604. Call or visit slimmintwallet.com. So call 1-800-654-6604. Order now.
It's a new season of Sherry.
Having a good time has always been my #1 goal. I tend to get crazy. At my age, I should not be jumping up and down like that. And if you don't know what I mean, ask your mama. The young ones, y'all we don't know what you're talking about. But I promise you, in 30 years, you will.
It's the best time in daytime.
Weekdays at 2 p.m. on Big Fox.
Thank you so much for joining us here on Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. As I mentioned, I want to play this vignette from Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. We had this for you a few weeks ago, but as of today being the last day of Donate Life Month, I wanted to rebroadcast this for you from just a couple of weeks ago.
Nationally right now we have 103,000 people waiting for an organ transplant. But right here in New York State, we have nearly 8,000 New Yorkers waiting for an organ transplant. Nearly 1,100 have been waiting for more than 5 years. In New York, we have the 3rd highest need for organ donors, but the 3rd worst organ donor enrollment rate. Last year, unfortunately, we lost 400 New Yorkers waiting for a life-saving organ transplant. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues, this is unacceptable. We can and we must do better.
Immediately when they transplanted, he lit up, and his wife said, "We have a life." Imagine being hooked up several times a week to a machine for hours a day. There is no life. And I will tell everybody, I'm looking around the room, it's easy. I was out in less than 36 hours.
My wife Megan and I lost our son, Alexander John Smullen, or AJ as his friends and family knew him, this past month. He passed away at Albany Medical Center on Wednesday, March 6th, right here in Albany, New York, at the age of 14, following a fierce fight in the pediatric ICU after being hit by a car in a tragic accident on Thursday, February 22nd, 2024. And one of the things that my wife and I have found solace in since his passing is this Donate Life program. You see, AJ gave the ultimate gift by participating in this life-saving program. And I am forever proud of my son for participating in this program and helping save what we think at this point is 5 lives, 5 families who have been affected. No parent ever wants to outlive their child, but if one must, then the Donate Life program is an incredible way to create some goodness out of tragedy.
And we are back. Thank you to Assemblyman Phil Palmisano for that vignette, or the conference, I should say, the Republican conference. I appreciate it. Okay, yesterday, how am I doing on time? Yesterday, Trump hailed the full and enthusiastic support from Ron DeSantis after they had a great meeting with the Florida governor. I am very happy to have the full and enthusiastic support of Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, Trump wrote on Truth Social. We had a great meeting yesterday. The conversation mostly concerned how we could work closely together to make America great again. Also discussed was the future of Florida, which is fantastic. I greatly appreciate Ron's support in taking back our country from the worst president in the history of the United States. November 5th is a big day. All right. I meant to bring this up earlier. Okay, so I mentioned how good some Democrats have, really all Democrats have it when it comes to the media. The difference in coverage on certain issues, on certain candidates, and those type of things. But they get so used to that kind of ease and that kid glove treatment that when they do get a tough question, a fair question, not even a difficult question, but one that they were maybe not expecting, they sometimes lose it. We've seen Biden get very upset with reporters who had the audacity to ask a pertinent question. Did you see that Nancy Pelosi snapped at MSNBC host Katie Tur, suggesting that Katie Tur was an apologist for Trump? Is there anybody in the media, in the legacy media, not the MSNBC's legacy, but that you could deem an apologist for Trump? Pelosi said, I have sympathy and respect for everybody who votes. I'm just glad people vote. I know some of them would never, will always reject those of us who might look different to them in leadership or the rest. And that's that. But there are those who have real legitimate concerns about immigration, globalization, innovation, and what does that mean for their job and their family's future. And we have to address those concerns. And Joe Biden is doing that. Pelosi went on to credit Biden, arguing, quote, he created 9 million jobs in his term in office. Donald Trump has the worst record of job loss of any president, so we just have to make sure people know. Now, think of, that's really how dumb they think you are. That when you hear, oh man, Trump had the biggest loss of worst record of lost jobs of any president. Oh, I guess I didn't even realize. I can't vote for him. I can't support him. It was such a blatant political message that even MSNBC's Katie Tur had to say, that was the global pandemic. Yeah, so Pelosi is blaming Trump when it is clearly the fault of a global pandemic where the government told us we had to shut down. Where Washington told us we had to shut down. Where New York State told us we had to shut down. It's not Trump's fault of those lost jobs. And then to think on the front end of that, you're giving Biden credit for when things started opening again. It's unbelievable. Just blindly political. So she's not used to that. How dare Katie Tur question her? Not question her, just state a fact. So she actually paused for a moment and then snapped. She said, quote, he had the worst record of any president. We've had other concerns in our country. If you want to be an apologist for Donald Trump, that may be your role, but it ain't mine. You are telling a host, I can't put a fine enough point on this. You are telling a host on MSNBC that she is being an apologist for Trump because she rightfully, and not shockingly or gotcha or anything like that. She rightfully said so many jobs were lost at the end of Trump's term because of a global pandemic. And Nancy Pelosi, not used to that kind of regular treatment. I mean, boy, that'd be the easiest question. You know, we Republicans get such gotcha questions and nasty questions that there looks like a walk in the park. All she was stating was a fact. So Nancy Pelosi actually pauses, cannot believe with her eyes what's happening. Snapped, he had the worst record of any president. We had other concerns in our country. I don't know what that means, because now she's flustered. We had other concerns in our country. So then what do they typically do? On the left, when it doesn't go their way, they go to name calling. If you want to be an apologist for Donald Trump, that may be your role, but it ain't mine. Yeah, I know that's one thing I think about when I think about MSNBC's Katie Torr. Torr even responded, I don't think that anyone can accuse me of that. Pelosi talked through Torr's response and said, no. But let me just say, as the Speaker of the House, we put forth a $3 trillion bill, $3 trillion of investment in communities and the rest. And that stimulates the economy. I mean, she's all over the place. She was knocked up against the ropes. She didn't know how to get out. Pelosi also rejected the prospect of a second Trump term, saying, you'll have to forgive me. I cannot subscribe to the fact that he would be the president of the United States. Wow. It's beautiful. I mean, she could not handle. And that just goes to show you, it tells you a little bit about what the reputation of the media, that the media, even Torr saying, and no one can accuse me of that, that they treat Democrats so easily and so kindly, if you will, that they can't even be corrected during an interview. She snapped. It's the only term for it. But I do have to take a break before I snap. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Attention, if you were a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and now have uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call now to see if you qualify. There's no fee unless we win your case.
Attention high school students, college transfer students, or anyone looking to further their education. This is the event for you at the Elmira Elks on May the 8th. There will be a free college fair with free parking. Come and talk to 2- and 4-year college representatives, in and out of state schools, public and private schools, technical schools, United States Armed Service recruiters, local police and fire departments recruiting new cadets. This only happens once a year, May the 8th at the Elmira Elks College Fair from 6 to 8 p.m.
When the dust cleared, Lexi was gone.
I have some information about your missing person. He's my son.
Alex is a really good kid.
Need to speak to one of your players.
These kids are my world.
He lied right to my face.
It's better to beg for forgiveness than to ask for permission.
We don't want a hostage situation to pop up.
Put the gun down. What happens next is on you.
Tonight. And we are back, frankly speaking, here on Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Ake. I'm looking at Marcus Street there as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio, giving you a little more fodder when it comes to how biased the media is, specifically MSNBC. Did you see what Nicole Wallace said? It's not accurate to say everyone in the Republican Party is a conspiracy theorist, but as with racist, all of the conspiracy theorists are Republicans. So not all Republicans are racist conspiracy theorists, but all racist conspiracy theorists are Republicans, according to MSNBC. Okie doke. Tulsi Gabbard, who, if you remember Tulsi Gabbard, she was a Democrat. She, I think, technically left the party. She's been saying some really important things. Some people even speculating that she could be Trump's VP nod. She has a new book out for Love of Country, Leave the Democrat Party Behind. And it's being released today. She says, we have no time to waste. We live in troubled times. Our nation is bitterly divided. Our future as a republic, as a union, appears bleak. The news, the noise, the insanity, the darkness is something many of us want to shut out. There are times when all I want to do is grab my surfboard and paddle out into the ocean or go to a hike in the mountains. But there is too much at stake in this moment to put our heads in the sand and go about our lives with blinders on, hoping the insanity will fade away. The insanity and threats to our constitutional democracy will not fade away and will only increase unless we stand up and remind those trying to destroy this country that ours is a government of, by, and for the people. She goes on to give her history of this. But she said, we live in the greatest country in the world, filled with potential for us to build a brighter future and a more perfect union, where every American can live free in peace and with opportunity for prosperity. A future where we celebrate free speech and respect each other as children of God and as Americans, even if we disagree on an issue or policy. This is the country our founders envisioned for us, and it is my fervent hope that we can come together, remembering the foundational principles that connect us Americans, to make that a vision a reality. It's up to us, all of us, to make it great. Will you join me? Aloha. So yes, some have speculated that she may be, and that sounds like an interesting book. I would like to see it. But anyway, I would like to read it. But some have speculated that she may be VP potential for Trump. I just received this message. We were talking about Nancy Pelosi somehow calling Katie Torr Trump apologist just because she pushed back on the fact that Nancy Pelosi had the audacity to ignore the global pandemic and blame Trump for job losses at that time. This is from a viewer, not me. This is from a viewer, not me. I saw that clip and it was beautiful. She pointed her shaky finger at her, but her newly lifted face didn't move a bit. That wasn't me saying it. Okay, here's a good point from a different... Oh, no, same for you. I want to like Tulsi, but I just don't trust her somehow. I understand that mindset. It's always going to be tough when you had someone that was a Democrat and switching over, getting a Republican nod for VP. But I will say she didn't back down from those Democrats in standing up for what she believed in, which wasn't, sadly, the principles of the Democrat Party at that time, which is very telling of where the Democrat Party is headed, so they turned on her. But I understand your point. Yeah, exactly. Ken, great point. MSNBC isn't very original. They got that from the old saying that not all horse thieves are Democrats, but all Democrats are horse thieves. Yeah, it's like Nothing Burger and, well, not recently Chaos. And they get these statements and these words that they think you're hearing it for the first time and that they're brilliant for saying it as if they came up with it. It's one of the toughest things to overcome when you watch political coverage. To see people go on a show and think that they're the most brilliant for saying something that you have heard a million times. Wow, you said Nothing Burger. Okay, that's exciting. You know, that kind of idea. We've got to take our last break of this hour. Stay with us. Wrapping things up. This show went quickly, and I'm so glad you joined us. We'll be right back.
Wow, you found it.
I did.
The History of Water Part 6? I've been dying to read this.
I know, honey.
I always wanted that book.
At Culligan, we get that most people don't think about water like we do, and that's okay. You see, when we install one of our high-efficiency water softeners, we're thinking about hard water and limescale buildup, so you can just think about longer-lasting appliances and softer skin and hair. At Culligan, we think about your water, so you don't have to.
Call today to schedule your free water test.
This is an important message for firefighters, members of the military, and airport workers. For decades, first responders and firefighters at military bases and airports used a chemical-based foam to fight fires. Studies have shown that chemicals used to make aqueous film-forming foam, or AFFF, are highly toxic to humans and have been associated with several types of cancer. If you or someone you know was diagnosed with any of those cancers, call now for a free case review.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking, here on Big Fox. I know I mentioned James Carville earlier. There's a piece by Rich Lowry at the New York Post. If you have a moment, we don't have time for it. But if Trump's guilty of, quote, election interference, then so is Bill Clinton. And it was, if you use the same argument that Bragg and others are making with the hush money for Stormy Daniels. And what about all the things that the Clintons did to cover up scandals? The list of Bill Clinton's ethical lapses is long. Now, if we take Alvin Bragg seriously, stealing the 1992 election has to be added to the list. I thought it was a good point. But most voters now believe that Democrats are engaged in lawfare, as they're calling it. Most voters think Democrats are, quote, using the government and legal system in biased ways to politically damage former President Donald Trump. That's according to a Harvard-Harris poll. The question was asked of 1,961 registered voters. Do you think the legal prosecution of Donald Trump, that they're fair and unrelated to politics, or do you think the Democrats today are engaged in lawfare, a campaign using the government and the legal system in biased ways to take out political opponents? A majority of 57% said they believe Democrats are engaged in lawfare, while 43% believe the prosecutions are both fair and apolitical. You can think it's fair in the sense that you probably don't support Trump, but you can't think it's apolitical. Not if you really do the research, specifically on Bragg and what he's done to twist himself up into coming up with this case. The poll asked a very similar question, which yielded nearly identical results. Do you think the prosecutions of Donald Trump are fair and unbiased, or are they politically motivated? A majority of 56% said the prosecutions are politically motivated, while 44% said they are fair and unbiased. What is more, most voters, 58%, believe that Trump's trials in the heavily Democratic jurisdictions, including Manhattan and Fulton County, Georgia, should be moved to different jurisdictions to avoid real or perceived bias. Well, there you go. Hey, by the way, did you see that AOC does have a Democratic primary? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez will face a retired insurance executive. Marty Dolan originally planned to challenge Representative Jamal Bowman, but said he switched races over to Ocasio-Cortez because he did not want to complicate things for George Latimer, a county executive and former state senator, who also is looking to unseat Bowman. George is a really good choice against Jamal, considering what we're running for, which is restructuring of the federal government's relationship with New York and New York's competitiveness in the world, which is non-existent right now. It's really better for me to run in New York because they're really where the heart of the argument is. For Dolan, the arguments include not just economics, but also getting rid of what he calls radical policies and ideas that he saw in both Bowman and AOC. The latter he calls the leader of the radical movement. Republican lawmakers tell Biden he better get off of TikTok after signing the bill that could see the app banned. Senator Joni Ernst and Representative Troy Nehls urged President Biden on Monday to lead by example and suspend his campaign's use of TikTok over the threat to national security posed by Chinese-owned app. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I just tried to yell out her name too fast. Marjorie Taylor Greene, threat to oust Mike Johnson is to take center stage, according to The Hill. This is what happens when I try to move too fast. We are out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for all the waves. We had fun this morning. At least I did. I hope you did as well. As I mentioned, Thursday, we'll be talking with former congressman, current assembly candidate, current chairman of the Steuben County Republican Committee, Joe Sempolinski. So you can get your questions in. That is Thursday. And I hope that you'll join us tomorrow morning, starting at 6. Yes, 2 hours, starting at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning with Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV. Big Fox, have a great day, everyone.
It's a new season of Sherry.
Having a good time has always been my number one goal. I tend to get crazy. At my age, I should not be jumping up and down like that. And if you don't know what I mean, ask your mama. The young ones, y'all like, we don't know what you're talking about. But I promise you, in 30 years, you will.